All right, week 3, power rankings. Let's do it. Friday morning, getting ready for the weekend. Had a decent Thursday night game between the Dolphins and the Bills. It wasn't a complete blowout, so that's good. James Cook had a good week, Ted, so you were right. But, that's about all I like with your team, if I'm being truthfully honest. Just kidding. But am I? All right. I beat Bobby last week, 130 to 122. Matt beat Tyler 95 to 64. Rusty beat Reed 142 to 134. Gaddy beat Carbs 139 to 108. Dooley beat Sidnam 109 to 84. And Brad beat Ted 125 to 101. So that's kind of how we're looking right now in this for last week. Just kind of recapping there. So we'll start right into it. At the bottom, Sidnam team remains at number 12. I mean, there's not much to say. The least amount of points scored so far this season. And now you lose Joe Burrow for, I would say, almost the entire fantasy season. It's just, I don't know how you can potentially, and now you got to start Russell Wilson, which, listen, great week against the Cowboys last week, but is that going to be sustainable? Plus, he probably isn't going to play the whole year. So to me, Sidnam's team is kind of more in a rebuild and, trying to get after what was a good stretch for him for the long time. So I think I was really happy. Tyler's team at 11. Now I know that seems low and, but, I've been harping on this for a while now, but like Derrick Henry had a bad week last week. Like Tyler cannot afford to have Derrick Henry or Saquon to have a weak week. Otherwise, like the team is just not great besides that. And I just worry that like if you don't get a great Derrick Henry or a great Saquon, you are going to be in a situation where you're going to have to depend on guys that aren't going to be as consistent enough. So hasn't had a great year and scored 64 points last week. So that's just not what you want to see. So that's why Tyler's team is now at 11 in the power rankings. 10 at 10 still. 0-2 to start the season. Hasn't really got the points. I think CeeDee Lamb will be better. James Cook's been awesome, and obviously he had a great game last night. Can Nick Chubb, who ran for a touchdown last week, can he still be a fantasy factor? Although I don't love what I saw from him like the last first couple weeks there. And obviously you're relying on Michael Penix, who I really like, but what's the situation with that Atlanta offense? So I don't think Ted's team's in a bad situation right now, but obviously really needs to get this win last week, but had a good start last night with James Cook in the books there. I got Dooley at 9. 2-0? Is Dooley's team for real? I'm not buying the hype, if they do like one of those buy or sell like segments on TV. I'm still selling the Dooley stock because he does have the second amount of points, least amount of points scored against did have a win against Sidnam, who is the worst team in the league. But Dooley's team's 2-0. And you can't argue with that, as there are only 3 teams that are 2-0 in the entire season so far, and that'd be me, Matt, and Dooley. So he is in that rank. He only, does have some points scored against that are, not significant, but the team's 2-0. So you can't argue with the results, but need to get more from Marion Hampton. Just hasn't done much the first 2 weeks. Tucker Kraft, who was awesome last week, can he stay healthy? I know he's questionable with an injury this weekend. That would be a big loss if he doesn't have it. And I think Zay Flowers, and listen, Herbert might be a better fantasy quarterback than we think this year. So keep an eye on Dooley's team. I'm not saying his team is there yet, but I think you have that 2-0 start. Sometimes it's all you need to kind of jumpstart a fantasy season there. So we got Dooley's team at 9. Brad's team at 8. I don't necessarily hate where Brad's team's at. It just hasn't had a good start to the season. You got Keon Coleman. He had to start yesterday. Didn't do much. McCaffrey, I think, is still going to be a viable option. And Jared Goff had, 35 touchdown passes last week. But you got to get more from Nico Collins, who only had the 1 touchdown really last week, but didn't do much. And that Texans offense right now is just kind of like, they're going to win a lot of games at defense. So how much can Nico kind of give you? And now with, Burrow out with the Bengals, how much can Chase Brown give you? So I think Brad's team's still in a decent spot. It just hasn't gotten out to a great start. But I think right now I got to put him at the 8 spot. I got Rusty at 7, but that was a great win over Reed last week. He scored 142 points, had the highest total of any team last week. I really like what I saw from the backs, which has been Jonathan Taylor, who, I mean, listen, I forgot Daniel Jones was Patrick Mahomes. If he's not on the Giants, I really, I should have saw that coming. Javonte Williams he's had a great year for the Cowboys so far. So that's, fitting in nice. And even with that, like Lad McConkey really not doing a whole lot and NTN really not doing a whole lot. But, if you have Taylor and Williams running the way they are, that's going to be a really nice solidification of that running back duo. And hopefully that can give Rusty the kind of jump start that he needs to get there. Matt at 6. Now, you know what you're thinking. If, Matt 2-0, should he be higher in the power rankings? Well, the reason why I'm not going to go that far yet, first of all, you saw the Jets just, maybe with Tyrod, actually Garrett Wilson will have a better value. You haven't seen it from Laporta yet, but what I will say is Matt has the least points scored against in the league by far, 144 through 2 weeks. Where I actually have the highest at 248. So it's just, it is what it is. Matt's had the least amount of points scored. I'm not saying that's the only reason why he's won these games, but it obviously helps a little bit too. But I still think the team is good. I still think Matt's team is going to be right there in the playoff. But, even though he's 2-0, I can't push him ahead of some of the other teams that I saw yet. I'm going to say yet. But I think there's improvement moving forward there with Matt's team. Bobby at 5. Listen, Bobby's team should have beat me last week. There's no other way to say it. I was only up 20 points going into the Monday night game with Bowers and Genty. And Genty's been terrible to start the year. Not saying he will be, but he has been awful to start the year. He just has. And Bowers, I think, was a little banged up. But that was just a weird game for the Raiders. I think they'll bounce back offensively. They do have the Commanders this week, whose defense isn't great. So they should have a better matchup there. But, I mean, if Malik Neighbors is going to do that, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's going to be fun for everybody. You know what I mean? He's that good of a football player. Carbs team at 4. I love the Jacobs-Bucky Irving combo. Can Harold Fannin truthfully be a legit tight end option? But obviously you got Josh Allen. I just think Carbs team is still really solid, and I think, despite the 1-1 start, I think he'll be right there in the thick of things. So I like where I'm seeing there from Carbs at 4. Reed at 3. I did a little switcheroo. Reed's team's still really good. Had a tough loss to Reed last week. Still put 133 points up. So probably could use a little bit more from all the starters there. But I still think Reed's team's in a good spot there at number 3. I'm putting myself at 2. 2-0, have the most points for in the league so far. Did beat Gaddy, who's number 1 on the power rankings. We'll get into that in a sec. But need more for Brian Thomas Jr. He hasn't done dick so far, but the team is still doing well. And got out to a good start yesterday with Tyreek Hill and Dalton Kincaid both catching touchdowns. So I'm coming for you, Dooley. And number 1 is Gaddy. I know he's 1-1, but still has the most points for. You got the best team roster. I'm not ready to throw it away just yet at number 1. I think there's still going to be, there might be a challenge there for me or Reed or somebody others, but I'm still going to put Gaddy's team at number 1 for now until I see otherwise, unless he goes into a 1-2, 1-3. But I still think his team is really good. He'll be fine. So that's your power rankings for week 3. If we get into some of the games for this week, I take on Dooley. Already out to a good start with 33 points. So, I like what I see there so far. Gaddy had said, "No, listen, Gaddy's got to win this matchup. This is a must win." I mean, you're 1-12 in the power rankings. Ted out to a good start with James Cook against Reed. So, if Ted has a good week and, Reed kind of stumbles a little bit, he can go to 1-2 and, anything can happen there in the standings. And then you got Rusty against Bobby. Big matchup because I think both teams are going to put up a lot of points this week. Rusty coming up a big week, and I think Bobby kind of got screwed by that Monday night game with Bowers and Genty. I think they'll bounce back. I think they'll have a better week. Matt and Carbs, Carbs already had Josh Allen play, so you have that in the books so far. Matt's sitting there with 13 points already as well. And then Brad and Tyler. Brad only had 3 points, I guess, from a IDP. I'm not sure, but that could be a big matchup there too. Tyler trying to avoid 0-3. Maybe it's the first time in a long time because Tyler's team's always been one of the better ones, and now it seems to be kind of switching. So that's it for week 3. I will see you guys later.